So we're just past the hour, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for honoring me, for being here. I appreciate it, really I do. And the sharings that you have sent, that you forward on, your pictures, the growth is tremendous. I'm so pleased for all of you. Thank you for doing that. And yeah, I'm just really blessed to have you with me. So we'll just, if there's any troubles that you have, my name is Cathy, for those that are new. I'm the artist, and so we'll just get into art mode. So if there's any troubles or anything bothering you, it's heavy on your mind, just set that aside for this 1 hour of time. Give yourself that gift. And we'll just take 3 deep breaths in. And as we take a deep breath in, we'll just hold it at the top. And then just drop your shoulders down as you release it. You can actually feel that opening if once you get in the habit of doing that. So we'll take a deep breath in and hold it and release. Fast or slow, whatever you prefer. Drop those shoulders. Another deep breath in. And hold it and release. And that moment of breath that we hold is just a bit of a meditative state. It puts us in the thoughts of now, of being present. So we'll take a 3rd deep breath in and hold it and release. And drop those shoulders and just give them a little shake. Just loosen up this area. It can get tight. Just keep my warm shirt on there. Keep everything covered. So we have a couple of minutes before we start. If you have your canvas, I've just put a piece of painter's tape from one side to the other. From the top of the canvas to the bottom of the tape is 1.5 inches. There's nothing else on the canvas. If you can see some little lines there, ignore them. We're going to paint over that. That's just a sketch I drew and then erased. So just a tape, one piece of tape all the way across, just to give us a really straight horizon line at the top of the water. And today are the waves. So it's these waves. We're going to do these waves without doing a paint resist. And someone asked me, what does that mean without a paint resist? It means we're not going to use a masking fluid or tape. The only tape we're doing is the horizon line, just to give us a really straight line. But it's not actually a paint resist, because we will take that off before we're finished. But no other paint resist is required, just that piece of tape. So hopefully the wave's not too mean. If your wave is nice and soft and fun, that's good too. So I have paper towel. I have some brushes. I have a number of different brushes. One of the brushes that I suggested you bring to class is a flat brush. So it's flat. So I have 2 different sizes. So they're a flat brush. If you turn it on an angle, you can see they're flat. They're not rounded at the top. They're squared. So if you have a brush like that, would be handy. And I just have 2 different sizes to show you. And then a number of different brushes. I have a 6. So these are all pointed, a 6, a 2, another number 2, and an angle brush. So whatever we end up using of that variety. Sometimes people get their own favorite brushes. So if you have your favorites, bring those along. That's perfect. Colors today, we have a Prussian blue. If you don't have a Prussian blue, if you have cerulean blue, if you have cobalt blue, just a darker blue, if you want to use ultramarine blue, if that's what you've got, great. Whatever blue you've got. So we're going to stick with the same blue. We'll put some on and then go darker and darker to make those waves look a little bit deeper. And Veridian green is what I had suggested. If you don't have Veridian green, if you have emerald green, failing those 2, if you don't have either of those, then maybe a sap green mixed with some yellow when we get to that point. So we'll go through that one step at a time. And you won't need any white. So really it's that green and the yellow and the blue. And we're just going to create white by leaving white. So you're not actually going to paint any white on. All right, so we have a canvas. We're going to make a wave. We're going to make this wave without using paint resist. So we're just going to leave white spaces. And we're not wetting our whole canvas first. We are doing wet paint on dry. So with my brush, I'm using a number 6 brush. So I'm getting my brush wet. I'm going into my Prussian blue. So again, if you don't have Prussian blue, if you have cobalt blue, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue is just a really pretty color and gives lots of depth. So I'm going to start with this Prussian blue, and I'm going to go right across my whole, just at the bottom of that tape line where I put that tape. And for those that don't know, that tape line is 1.5 inches. The bottom of the line is 1.5 inches from the top of the paper. So I've just gone across that tape line just with that Prussian blue. Oh, it's not as dark as I'd like because I put water on it, but I will darken that again. And now let's start to create a little bit of waves. So these waves are far away, so they don't need to be really big. But there is a wave created already. I'm going to go along, I'm going to create another one, and I don't need them all to be the same, but I'm leaving a white space in between. That white space is the wave. So I'm just getting fresh paint on, doing another wave, and if it's lighter or darker, that's okay. Now I'm starting to come a little bit closer to my surface, so these waves are going to get a little bit bigger. You see that gap in between? I'm still leaving white. That gap in between gets a little bit bigger now. Now again, I'm going to get bigger still. Still using the same color paint, but my waves are going to get a little bit bigger. And play with this, just have fun with the paint. If it's a little thicker in some spots or wavy or heavy and you've got a few little lines, little dots here and there, that's okay. Just play with it and explore and see what happens if you touch a little bit extra paint here and there. What does that look like? We're going to start to create the look of that wave. So I'm going to come down about an inch. And I'm just creating the top of that wave. And it just kind of tears off to the corner. I'm just creating the top of that wave. I want to fill in a little bit. I want the waves to come towards that. So I'm going to go on a little bit of an angle so that wave meets the wave below. And then I'm going to do the same at the other side. So we've just started all the way across the top. just under that paint line. And then these waves up top are farther away, so they're smaller. And then they start to get a little bit bigger. And then the third set of waves, again, a little bit bigger, and just play with it. If you have some little markings in between or you want to add some now, go ahead. Just some little wave lines. And then we've just created the outer edge, the top edge of that large wave. And we've got the little waves just kind of coming off from the side. The color I'm using is Prussian blue. If you have a different color that you like better, then go ahead and use that. Then I'm going to go back onto the top of my wave where my tape is. And I'm going to make that quite a bit darker. So that's just using fresh paint, less water, just to darken the top. And I'm going to put some of this fresh Prussian, not to overdo it, but just in some of my waves and some of the spots. And if it drips and runs or makes a little bit of a jag that you hadn't planned on doing, watercolor can do that. Let the watercolor do what it's going to do. So just remember that this is just a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is our practice. And I'm just putting some fresh dark color on some of the waves. Not on every spot, but just some. And as I said, if I touch on some spots and one spot gets a little bit bigger, or I cover over some extra white, there's still lots of white on there. And keep in mind, watercolor is very forgiving in many regards, that if I don't like this darkness of color that I've put on this wave, and I take a damp brush and run it over top, I can lift off color and lighten that wave if I want to lighten it. So if it's darker than you like, just by going over a few times, and I'm just going to do that just to demonstrate, I'll fix it later, but just to demonstrate, if I go over that wave a few times with a damp brush and wipe off the paint I lift off, then I have a very light section there, if that's what I wanted to have. So I'll go back once that's dry and just add that wave back in, but it's just a demonstration. We can lift off paint, or we can add on darker paint. So take a deep breath and drop those shoulders, wiggle them around if you need to release some of that tension. We're going to go into Veridian green. So I'm pulling Veridian green from my canvas, adding a little bit of water, and I'm going to start to make just some circles, just some light circles of that green. So it's just kind of a cloudy, just a rounded circles, kind of cloudy. And while that's still wet, I'm going to get some yellow. So I have a mix of lemon and Hansa yellow. Maybe you have one or the other. Either is okay. I'm going to add a little bit of water, and I'm going to just stir that wave inside up a little bit with that yellow. So I'm blending it in there. So I've got Veridian green, and Hansa yellow. Now I'm switching from my number 6 brush that I was using, which was a little bit bigger. I'm switching to a number 2 brush, and I'm going back into my Prussian blue, and I'm going to create the top of my wave inside. So I'm not doing a straight line, I'm just doing short strokes, some a little bit bigger, some a little bit smaller, some thicker, some thinner, but just on top of that color that I've just put on there. And I'm going to carry that right down and leave a little bit wider space at the end. But I want that nice dark color on the top. And I'm switching back to my larger brush, my number 6 brush, and I'm going to start to curve some of that from the top of my blue color. I'm just with my brush, I've got a little bit of water on it. I added a little bit of Prussian, but I'm starting to create the angle of that wave coming down. I have a little bit of Prussian and water. And so I'm just creating that angle coming down. So it's a little bit of fresh, but it's not a whole lot. It's lightened, watered down. I'm not going to add any more paint to my brush. I'm going to use the same brush, and I'm going to go over what the green, the emerald, or not emerald green or Prussian green, and I'm just going to pull that color down. Now, if my brush dries, I'm just going to dampen it a little bit, and I'm pulling the color from the top. So I'm pulling from that fresh Prussian blue that I put at the top. I'm using that color and pulling that color down. So I'm letting that wave have a nice arch, a natural arch. Adding a little bit of water to my brush and continuing to pull that down, just in a rounded arch. When I get to the end of where that green yellow color is, I'm going to stop going in that direction. So only this side of the wave comes in this direction. And as I'm at the bottom of the wave, I'm just going to go in rounded strokes, just blending those colors together, just in rounded strokes, so I get almost the look of the crashing of where that wave hits at the bottom. We're going to go in the opposite direction here, but not yet. We're going to use a different brush to do that. Everything else from the top, pull down from your Prussian blue, pull that color into your wave. So if you find there isn't enough Prussian blue at the top to pull down, then just above it, just add a little extra dark Prussian at the top. You can add a little bit more. Rinse your brush, just have a clean brush, and then pull some of that down into your wave. And if you do that, you'll start to get even a little bit more blue. And if you get a few dots in there, actually it will look like some of the splash of the water. Just take your time with it. Just breathe into it. If you want to, once some of it dries, you can brush a little bit more and get a really soft look of that water flowing. So I'd mentioned I was going to fix that wave once it dried up there. So I'm just going to add a little bit fresh Prussian just to fill that back in. That was just a demonstration to show you how we can do lifting off And if you're this far that you've got the wave done at this point, and you want to, you can go back onto your waves and just add a little bit of fresh dark. So we're going to continue to build a little bit more and a little bit more. So we have some really nice depth. That water looks really deep. So next we're going to go into a flat brush. So if you have a flat brush, these are samples. I have a 1 inch, I have a 1/2 inch. So they are a flat brush. There's no point to them. They're not a pointed brush, they're flat. And I'll use my 1 inch just because that's what I've got in my hand. I'm also going to add a little bit of fresh Prussian at the end of that green line. So I'm adding fresh Prussian there, my dark blue, just fresh. And now with my flat brush, I'm going to dry brush. So I'm not wetting this brush at all. And I'm going to dry brush away from my wave. So it's going the opposite direction. This is where the wave ends. So I'm dry brushing from the top of that wave away. If I run out of paint to pull on my brush, I'm not getting my brush wet anymore. I'm going to add more fresh Prussian up the top. And I'm brushing the opposite direction. So I do want those brush strokes to show. I want it to look like that wave is turning in a different direction. So I'm going to continue to brush until it's right down near the bottom. Again, if I need more up there, I'm going to add some more. I'm going the opposite direction. So if I have some brush strokes that look like that wave is going that way, that's what I want. Now I still have some paint on my brush, so I can go back into my other wave. I can start to pull some more of the angle using the side of my brush. And by doing that, it will start to leave a few little white spaces in between. And remember, take a deep breath. It's just a piece of paper and water. So we're at halftime already, believe it or not, and I'll let you finish with where you are with your wave. We have more work to do. You must hold your quiet center and where you do what only you can do. Choose stillness as an active practice of patience. It is okay to wait. You will get where you need to be. You must hold your quiet center where you do what only you can do. Choose stillness as an active practice of patience. It is okay to wait. You will get where you need to be. Very nice. So while we're practicing not being still, doing painting, but quiet in our minds, hopefully. The dry brush gives us a really soft look. It will give us a soft look, and it will leave the brush strokes on using a dry brush. If you want to use a wet brush and that works for you, then you go ahead. That's okay. There's no right or wrong. It's just a new use of a brush. and it gives that different angle, that's where that wave changes. So it's different than the brush strokes from the center. So I put fresh Prussian on my brush, and I'm just going to start to do some little wispy motions at the side where the wave has crashed. I'm going to continue with that right down to the bottom, just some wispy motions, just rounded, this kind of rounded look. This is where the wave has now landed, or where it's starting to finish. So we want that cloudy look, a little bit like water spray. And I'm going back on to the very top of, not the upper part of my wave, but I'm going on to my top of my wave, and I'm starting to add a little bit of detail, just some highs and lows. Going to add a little bit extra coming down into the wave. And then so I'm continuing to add a deeper crest to the top of that wave. And at one point, I'm just going to stop. So I'm not going right to the outer edge because I've got this water flowing over. So I've got some highs and lows, a little bit into my wave, perhaps just a few spots where it's coming down. It's really starting to flow into the wave. You can have a couple of little quite deeper ones if I want to. That's up to, it's up to you or up to me. And then I want to work on my top edge. So I'm going to deepen this a little bit as well and start to add just some highs and lows up there. And I want to add a little bit of color, lighter Prussian blue, but a little bit of color in between. So I want to leave the white, but I do want a little bit of Prussian blue, just some markings. So I'm just adding some blue in the middle, very light, almost to make it look frothy. And now that some of this inside curled wave has dried, I'm going to go back on with my dry brush. Now it is damp a little bit, but I'm going to dry brush without adding any water. I'm going to curl some more of that wave. I put some fresh Prussian blue up there, so it should start to pull into my wave even more. And I'll do the same on the other side with that side brush, just brushing a little bit more. I can work a little bit more on this outer edge and just give this a little bit more of a frothy look as well. Just with a little bit of fresh Prussian blue. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This is waves. And I'll bring a fresh layer of that right down across the front again. Just in rounded strokes. Just rounded. I'm going to work a little bit more on my wave just to get a little bit of that white just showing just with my dry brush, but it is damp, so I'm just tapping it on my paper towel. I'm just pulling just a little bit to get those little white marks. I'm just using, I've got my flat brush, and I've just, it's damp a little bit because I've tapped it off on my paper towel. So I'm just going back over those waves again. And again, I just want to keep that frothy looking at the bottom. So I'm just going to do some rounded strokes near the bottom. And then when you're ready, we can take that tape off. So we'll just take that tape off so we have a nice straight horizon line. And before I move up to my horizon, I'm just going to deepen my wave just a little bit more with some fresh Prussian. Just deepening that inside edge. And then with Prussian blue, I'm going to start to work at my top corner on both, right across the top from side to side. I've got fresh Prussian blue. I'm going to rinse off my brush. All I want is that top ridge. I'm going to rinse off my brush so all I have is clean water. And I'm just going to use the clean water on my brush just to go across my canvas from side to side. But I'm not going to go as close. I'm not touching my horizon line. I'm just going just to it, just so I don't glance off it. I'm just right there, but I don't actually touch it. And then I can use paper towel if I want. And just tap here and there, just for a little bit of cloudy sky. So it's just a hint of clouds in the sky. Yep, I took the tape off and I put Prussian blue at the top. So I can do that again, actually. I'll put Prussian blue at the top ridge all the way across to the other side. So I've got fresh Prussian blue, the same color as my waves. Yep. And then I'm going to rinse my brush completely. So I only have a wet brush. And I'm going to just run that brush along, not touching my horizon. So I'm just coming to it, but not touching it. And then I'm going to take paper towel. And I'm just going to rub here and there. No specific angle, just to give me some clouds in my sky. Now I've got an angle brush. If you just have a straight brush or if you have a flat brush, between where the green and the blue on your wave are, we're going to start to carve out, just by lifting off paint, we're going to start to carve off a little bit of white. So I'm just using my brush and lifting off paint. And I'm carving off a little section, just like a little V. Just where the one part of the wave starts to disappear and the other one's still going. Once you have that section carved out, we can put some fresh Prussian on the top of the smaller side at the corner. And we can pull that wave down on the inside of the other section. So we can see we have a divide of the two waves. And I can dry brush again that wave very lightly, almost not touching your paper. Just dry brush that away. We'll deepen that curl at the top. Just keep that nice dark color at the top. And you can play a little bit with a damp brush and just get some soft spots, or pulling from the Prussian blue at the top, get a deeper look. And we've got the deeper look at the front. We want to lighten that up just a little bit so I can lift off some paint in some of the areas of the waves and just lighten them in the middle. So that's just by using a damp brush and lifting off some color. So we're just lightening a few of those waves that are closer. And we can leave the dark underneath. We're just looking for a softer looking wave as it gets closer to the shore. So play with it as you lift off. You'll see you'll like that color, or you'll wish it was darker again. And if you lighten off and you want to regain that dark color, then that's just as simple as taking fresh Prussian and popping it back on. And in between some of those waves, if you just want to put a little bit of color, that's okay. Just leave some white. The white's what makes it pop. So if I want to add just a little bit of color in between, I've got Prussian on my brush. I can just touch that canvas just with a damp brush. It just adds a little bit of color in that wave. So it's a simple way to make waves, just leaving white. We can add dark and light and blend a little bit. I'm hoping the wave wasn't as difficult as you thought it would be. I think that color, that green color going in there makes a big difference with the blend of yellow. And then that nice wispy look where the wave is hitting. This rounded wispy look just adds that much to the bottom of the picture. So we want some nice soft spots. So if you've got it a little bit dark on one side and you want to lighten it up a little bit, then just go ahead and just use your brush in a rounded motion and just give that soft watery look. The same on the other side. I just want this to look a little bit softer. Just rinse my brush in clear water and then just do some circular strokes and lift off any excess paint so I get a nice soft watery look. So if you're looking for a misty look in a forest, this is a great way to do it too. Put your color on and then lightly massage to get that soft misty look. You can do the same in the center of your wave. If you want some white, you can just use a damp brush and just start to pull some of that color out. And if you find you pulled too much color out, then you can go back on with fresh color. So we're done if anybody has any questions on that, but I think what we'll do is just decide where are we going to put our artist signature. And if your canvas is still wet, then you can wait a few minutes. Oh, still wet, so I'll have to wait. All right, everyone, have a good weekend. Thank you for joining.